Howdy, folks. I'm Brian,
I'm Amber.
and here's some Reddit. Our letter today is titled, Am I the jerk for insulting my wife after finding out she stole a ton of money from me and gave it to her friend who is undergoing cancer treatment? So, this one does involve the content warning, of course, of mentioning cancer, but it's not mentioned much. After my wife, a 32-year-old female, and I, a 35-year-old male, got married, we decided it would be best to keep our funds separate. Essentially, we have a joint rainy day fund and a joint general expenses/bills account. While my wife is a preschool teacher and unfortunately does not make much money, I'm an engineer and I make a pretty decent salary. Due to this income gap, I'm the sole funder of the joint accounts. Outside of those two accounts, our bankrolls remain completely separate. Some years ago, I was advised to invest my money and diversify my portfolio. Over 3 years, I was able to save $130,000 worth of fund savings, as in the money that wasn't going towards necessities or retirement. After saving $130,000, I felt financially stable enough to purchase my dream car. So even though my wife discouraged it, I went ahead and spent $122,000 on a high-end luxury sports car. I love the car and thoroughly enjoyed driving it every weekday for about 2 years. After those 2 years, my wife begged me to sell the car. She said that I was too old to be zooming around in a six-figure impractical man toy. Keeping my son, a 3-year-old now, in mind, I agreed that it was best for every car that we owned to be a practical four-door. So, a little over a month ago, I sold the car to a private buyer for $114,000. The guy I sold it to paid for it in 100% physical cash. So I took the cash and put it in a big safe that I keep in my home office closet. The cash remained there for multiple weeks, foolish on my part. Context behind the preceding events. Well, my wife's childhood best friend, Sally, who is also a preschool teacher, got diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer last year. The argument. A couple of days ago, I finally planned to deposit all the cash from my safe, so I checked my safe for the first time in a month, foolishly, only to discover all of the money was missing. I flipped out. The safe was locked when I checked it, so I immediately asked my wife if she went in there. She said that she was planning on telling me that she took all of the money and gave it to Sally for treatment costs and to make her life a little easier after treatment. I questioned why she would even think taking that much money without asking was acceptable, and she responded by calling me greedy and saying that Sally needs the money far more than I do. I retaliated by calling her a brainless moron and telling her that she gave away a huge chunk of my savings and it's not about greed. I was angry and incredibly lucky to profit from $130,000 over 3 years of investing, and it will be near impossible to duplicate. The worst part is that I would have loved to help Sally. I could have given her some cash to help lessen her burden, but giving away $114,000 is just insane to me. I'm not a millionaire. The car purchase was an idiotic move looking back at it. The past 2 days have been awful. We haven't spoken except in regards to our son. Am I the jerk? Alright, folks, what do you think? Jerk or not the jerk?
Mostly not the jerk, although I don't ever advocate calling someone a brainless moron.
Yeah, I mean, certainly tensions probably were running high, but I think that there's a lot of questions that I have about this situation in general, and primarily about how the household finances are divided up. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, of course, let me preface this by saying I think she's in the wrong by taking $100,000 from a safe and giving it away without talking to her partner. So, right off the bat, there's no question in my mind that was the wrong thing to do and it was unethical. But I do want to know and understand the finances of this house. It sounds like you're able to put away a lot more fun money every month than she does, which I think for a marriage is a little bit of an inequitable type of arrangement, right? I think that you should be working out an arrangement where you both have similar fun money amounts or putting money away into retirement or something like that that will benefit both of you, right? So I do question how you're dividing up your money. But that isn't to say then again that she's in the right here. I'm just saying that there's a lot of variables that I'm not 100% sure about and I don't really understand that, and there are probably some other underlying issues at play here beyond just the did she steal $100,000 or not. So, For sure, I think that this is a huge breach of trust on her part. I think that this is going to be a hard thing for you two to get past, if you can even get past it. And it's probably going to require a lot of time and therapy because this was, again, kind of a huge breach of trust. But um, to understand her motives, if she's been living from paycheck to paycheck, also while you're out buying luxury vehicles, that might be a little bit unfair and inequitable. So,
Yeah, well, and I wonder too, like, I imagine it was OP's idea to keep their finances separate. So I wonder whether she really was on board with that or just agreed to it because she didn't see another option.
yeah, and that's a really good question. Like, what is their finances? And so I think I would need a little more information about how everything was divided up to give like a solid a matter of fact of whether or not OP is the jerk in this case. But for sure, I think that the wife has some pretty bad issues with trust at this moment, and certainly I feel sorry for her friend, and it sounds like OP would have even been willing to help in this case. But $100,000 for a couple that aren't just like rolling in cash is a huge amount of money. So yeah, I think you two probably need counseling at a very minimum. And if you don't want to do counseling, OP, then you probably need a lawyer. So anyhow, take care and good luck.
The biggest jerk is the US healthcare system.
Yeah, the biggest jerk here is the US healthcare system, where someone who is has a disease like this cannot afford to basically get it treated properly. Hi folks, this is After Hours Brian here. I've already edited the video, but I was giving a lot of consideration to this, and I really think that there's a little more here than what meets the eye. Just recently, we had an episode where someone was basically being financially abused. They were being given a certain amount of money that they thought that their husband told them that this is how much they needed, and it wasn't ever like enough to cover the expenses and whatnot. I'm wondering if there might be some kind of similar vein between this one and that. Maybe I'm reading into this too much. So we don't know, like, he doesn't mention anything about the child care distribution. He doesn't talk about, like, whether or not he's, setting an allowance about how much she can spend on household goods. We don't know what he means even by these joint accounts. Like, he says that he's covering the household expenses, but is he covering like clothing costs, or does he consider her work clothes her own responsibility, right?
Or supplies for her preschoolers.
Yeah, or supplies for the preschoolers, or any number of things here. So, like, while I do understand where the OP is coming from here, there could also, I think, and I think it's important to point out that there could also be some financial abuse going on here from OP's side. And this was his wife's basically like nuclear option. I'm not justifying what she did. Please do not get me wrong. I think that there needed to be more discussions, but I also think that there's so much information missing on this one that I just can't come to a reasonable judgment on certain aspects of it.
Right, and for him, like, if she is doing the majority of the housework and childcare, and he's treating the money like, oh, well, what you earn is yours and what I earn is mine, that's like, that would be unfair if that's the case.
Yeah, we'll say, suppose for a moment that she's doing all of the household chores, and this allows him to go ahead and earn all of the money that he's able to earn, right? On top of her doing her job. Then this is going to be give him the opportunity to advance his career and earn more money while she's at home doing all of the childcare, all of the chores, all of the labor, under the pretense of he's like, well, I pay all the household expenses, right? So I think that there may be more here. I think that this is going to be a little bit too hard to judge, and maybe even a little bit over my pay grade. So I think that the nature of the letter makes it a very speculative one, and in that respect, I don't know that I can come to any like clear judgment. So that's me. That's my Brian After Hours Brian kind of thing.
Yeah. After hours, Amber says unilateral financial decisions are usually not good. So, like, yeah, what she did, I don't think is okay, but also, like, him buying the car with that much of their money, knowing that she didn't want him to, was also kind of a little bit shady in that same vein.
Now we'll cut back to me talking from before. Not the jerk, your wife gave away over $100,000 without even discussing it with you? That's ground for divorce no matter how good her intentions. If she trusted you to care about Sally, she would have spoken to you. Divorce and a lawsuit. She gave away his money from their separate finances. Wife stole $100,000. It would have been bad enough if it had been taken out of their joint accounts, but it was effectively only his money. And yes, this is grounds for divorce. I would be forever paranoid about her finding other people that deserve my money more than me. I'm also curious that she didn't give away the money, as OP covers all of their expenses, leaving her whole paycheck for her. I'm also cynical enough to wonder if Sally actually received any of that money. Not the jerk, only because what she did was so egregious. But I get the feeling that your wife is not happy with how you have divided your finances in your marriage, and she will be willing to blow everything up to make a point of just how unhappy she is. I don't know how much better could you get? If I lived bill free and rent free, I'd be pretty ecstatic. Edit to add, the only step up is being a trophy wife and being born into wealth, or being born into wealth.
I mean, if your partner though is spending like $100,000 plus on a luxury car, without like, oh, it's my money, I can just do this. Like, I can see why she'd be frustrated.
Yeah. It sounds like he was able to go ahead and spend his money on whatever he wants, and she isn't necessarily able to go ahead and spend her money on whatever she wants. And she may look at this as like, well, he went out and spent $100,000 without talking to me first,
Well, I
and
explicitly said not to.
yeah, or I explicitly said not to, and it was on something so frivolous like a car, but when she goes out and spends $100,000 on someone who, really needs that money, she might view it as kind of like, well, he spent his money frivolously, so what's the problem with me spending the money on someone who really needs it? And like whether or not that's like a right or wrong mindset, I think that there are certainly like some issues here. There are some underlying issues at play here for sure. All right, folks, that's all the time we have for today. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider giving me a like, and if you didn't, consider giving me a dislike. Happy Tuesday. I have got some water here. I don't know what you folks have for beverages.
I have water.
Amber has a water. I hope you are all having a great week so far. We're going to have a few more short episodes this week, but then after this, we'll be all in the clear. So I hope you've all enjoyed these shorter episodes. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.
Bye.